Hi, this video is going to talk about the 2024 Release 2 with some demonstrations at the end. The highlights are the ability to compile incrementally for faster group compilations, a new GUI control called a chips box, and multiple improvements to the compiler and the debugger. So let's take a closer look. The incremental compiler has always been a part of the IDE when you use it to build a project. But now you can include it in the command line compiler too. Add the -incr equal build to your command line, and the compiler will compile only those programs that have modified text or that include a modified copybook. Now, the compiler does this by creating and reading a file called incr.iscc. You can customize the name and the location of this file, and then you can use the same one for different compiles. For instance, if you compile versions with and without debug. Pick one is an ANSI standard that some of our customers use, and now it's supported by isCOBOL. Bits can be used to represent Boolean data now using the new pick one type of usage bit. The -brand compile option lets you create classes with code to include or skip code based on the value passed with the option. The -csqqtwo option is needed if your embedded SQL uses the standard double quotes and you want to access a database that requires single quotes, like SQL Server. And in 2024 R2, you can use the value clause in working storage to instantiate an object instead of a separate set statement in your code. Now the debugger can show you the values of variables in any program in the perform stack, not just the current program. And the location of the paragraph, entry point, or method is now identified in the perform stack. The screenshot here shows the main paragraph is in the metobg1 method of my class. Now, when breakpoints were set on a line number, you would lose the bookmark if the source code changed and the line moved. But with this 2024 R2 change, the breakpoint is still valid. The debugger knows where it's supposed to be, even when the line number changes. To keep your GUI screens looking modern, we've added a new control called the chips box. It's a container control, meaning it holds other controls, and it holds buttons called tags with different values in them. Now, common uses are to input information into a field, or as a filter for options, or to make a choice. And I've put some examples of the use of chips on the screen here. The image of letters that's shown in the tags in the chips box were created with a new feature of $bitmap. Its most common use is to create these avatar images using initials. For instance, the Elton John tag on the screen uses EJ for the avatar image. Another GUI change is to proposals in entry fields. As the user types characters into an entry field with proposals set, by default, the list of proposals is filtered to just those containing the user's entry. If you want to filter differently, you can now filter them with items that start with those characters or just not filter them at all. More GUI changes are related to windows and mouse actions. You can inquire the state of the window your application is running in. Is it maximized, minimized, or in between? And when a mouse enters a new area of a grid or a tree view, it now returns its location in event data. We're going to see this in more detail in the demo. Some new environment variables affect your GUI screen. isCOBOL GUI window hook refers to a program that you can write that changes the properties of a window that's about to be displayed. You might want to customize a window depending on where it's running, for instance, perhaps making a window undecorated if running in Web Client, or setting the background a different color based on a login. When a user is searching in a grid or a list box or typing in an entry field that has a proposal, the characters that match what the user typed are highlighted. Now you can use isCOBOL GUI matching text color to customize this highlight color. If you want to handle all the occurrences of an event, you can set isCOBOL hot event program name. This is very similar to the existing variable, isCOBOL hot key program name, which is used to capture function keys and exception values. EasyDB-generated programs have been fine-tuned for SQL Server with light cursors. Light cursors cause only a subset of records to be returned at one time. It can help with performance of start statements, sometimes significantly, by reducing the workload on the database when there are a lot of users accessing it. In 2017 R2, the database bridge generation was converted to a one-step process where everything is done at compile time. But if you prefer to use the older two-step method, which is running EDB-IIS to generate and the compiler to compile, there are new EDB-IIS options that you can use to implement these light cursors. We've added some more compatibility support for other dialects of COBOL. $set box shade enhances RM COBOL's $draw box. And we've added support for AccuCOBOL's $regexp, regular expression. It's used to search strings using regular expressions. We've increased our ESQL compatibility to support group variables and clauses like the one on this slide. In the past, each value would have had to have been a separate variable. Now they can be defined in a group. We've added support for two more statements in the IBM DB2 syntax, values into and declare variable. The IDE has some new features. You can add subfolders in the structural and data views as well as the file view now to help you with organization. And reconciling, or real-time syntax checking, is a great feature, but if your source code is large, over say 15,000 lines of code, it can negatively affect the performance. Now you can turn off automatic reconciling and just check your syntax when you need it with the Control-R key combination. The profiler has two new configuration variables. Setting isCOBOL profiler enable to false disables the profiler when you start a program. Then you can use $profiler around just the section that you need it in. The isCOBOL profiler elapsed time config variable sets the timeout for a profiler flush. This is great for a long-running program when you only need the first few minutes in your profile report. And when you call a program with the call program statement and you want to pass switches, you need to set this new variable. Without it, the statement that's on this slide can be interpreted as a program called D in the myprog/A folder. With isCOBOL call program set switches turned on, the runtime knows it's calling myprog with two switches, A and D. To keep track of sessions, our isCOBOL EIS servlets store a cookie in the browser. But if you have multiple tabs, they would use the same cookie and so share the same session on the server. To have separate sessions, you would use the URL instead of cookies, and you can accomplish this by adding this code to your web.xml file. Similar to mass update GUI handling for isCOBOL screens, the screens created in RM COBOL's WOW and run with isCOBOL's COBOL WOW can buffer instead of constantly streaming as you update the screen. This reduces the TCP communication in thin client or web client, and it will improve performance and responsiveness for the user. And you can now get the result set returned by opening an ESQL cursor. This is similar to the fetch statement, although it's faster than the fetch statement and can be used in object-oriented programming. So let's go take a look at some of these changes. Okay, let's start with the chips box. I'm going to run isControlSet. This is our sample that shows how all of our controls work. And the isControlSet has a new tab called Containers because with the chips box, we now have 4 container controls. We have the tab, the accordion, the scroll pane, and now the chips box. And I can add a chips box here. And it's set up to create the JM avatar for John Mayer. And it's set up to have the X to delete. So I can delete some choices this way. And I can reset and start over again. And that's what you can do in the isControlSet. But we can look a little bit closer than that in the IS sample. So let's go there. And you see under the new features, the first thing is the chips box. So I'll click on that, and we'll create chip number 1, summer, and we'll make number 2. And you see that the options here are to change the shape of the chips box by squaring out the corners, and we can modify one. And you can delete one programmatically, as well as letting the user click on the X. And you can reset the chips box to clear it out. You can also list what's in the chips box here. Okay, now you see the WI for the winter season. Let's talk about that a little bit. That is the next program in the new features for 2024 R2 called WBitmap text box. So if we have some text like ISC, we can use any font we want, and we can make it a circle or a square in any size we want. This is going to set the gradient. And so I'm just going to generate this, and there's my picture there. I can generate it, as I said, as a square. And that's how you make the avatar that goes on that chips box. Now while I'm in samples, let's look at the new library routine, C $regular expression. You see that the string to parse here, and regular expression is in there twice, so we're going to check the regular expression, and I'm going to make it case insensitive, so we should get it 2 times. And we'll click on search, and there are the 2 times and the start and end in that string. So that's a pretty powerful tool that you can use now. Let's talk about the incremental compiler. There's an example of it in IS samples because there are over 250 programs in the IS samples folder. And we give you a batch script to compile it called compile.bat. In 2024, we've given you 2. One is the old way, compile-force, and one is the new way to compile it incrementally. So the compile-force looks like this, and I'm going to run it. It's going to compile all of the programs, and I'm going to time it. So there it is, 2 minutes and almost 46 seconds. So I'm going to make a little change to a copybook called list.work. We'll add an S here, multiple chips, and we'll save this. And now I'm going to use the regular compile script with the incremental settings on it. It looks like this. So you see the -incr equals build, and this should run much faster. Let's time it. So that ran in 15 seconds because it only had to compile one program, just one had changed. Now I want to show you the tree table mouse over to see the row returned. I have a little sample here, and we'll run it. Notice what happens every time I move the mouse into and out of the tree view. We get a mouse enter or a mouse exit, and it tells you where the mouse came in, the row and column. Now this works with, as you can see, the tree view with the table view style. It also works with the list box and the grid. Now I'm going to go into one of my favorite sample folders, Extend and Customize. There's a lot of great tools in here, but a new one is Window Hook. So I'm going to go into the Window Hook, and there's a program called Window, and then there's a hook program called Window Creation Hook. And we're going to run those. I'm going to run them in debug. And here's the debugger, and we'll run the program, step through. You saw that we're displaying a standard graphical window. Before it displays it, it's going to go into the hook program, and it's going to change some of the features. And there's our window. Let's continue on. And I'm going to click on the independent, back to our debugger. Before it displays this, it's going to pop into the window hook program, which is doing quite a few things with the independent windows, changing the colors, the size, etc. And here's the independent window with all of those changes applied. So I'm going to exit this. And this time we're going to do the floating window. So pop over to the window, creation hook. And while we're here, let me show you the new debugger features. In our Perform stack, I have 3 programs. This one here is actually a method, and it's going to tell you that it's a method of the window creation hook class. That's the class ID. So that's new. However, I'm in the window hook program, and let's say I want to look at a variable that's in another program. Say it's in the window program. I can double click on this and get the value of the variable even though I'm not in that program. Now that's something I've never seen another debugger do. We can go into any one of these programs, we can get the value, see down here, and then click on our green arrow here to go back to our current line and run. And there's our floating window. And that's a first look at 2024 R2. I hope you give it a try. If you have any questions, you can reach us at the information on the slide or at support@variant.com. Thank you.